Hi, this is B here. Figure I might as well get this done now because I might be busy tomorrow, so I have time. I'll briefly talk about the build, which is a Poison Spark Pathfinder. I think Poison Spark Pathfinder is pretty popular as it is, and since Rutu did a starter build on it, most people have kind of started this and built this in their own way. There are multiple endgame variants, I believe. One of them is what Immortal is doing, which is to use melding. So a lot of the endgame variants are heavily focused on defense. I think Poison Spark as a poison build will always cap out at dot cap, which is 40 mil around there. And so a lot of it at the end game is figuring out the kind of defenses you want to run, and also how you want to go about scaling those defenses, right? So let's talk about the Rutu's variant. I think Rutu's variant builds up damage pretty significantly, but at the same time it has, like, I would say, not as comfortable defenses because it is kind of still a budget starter. But then again, in the same vein, I believe that I don't think a lot of people have kind of done that. They've just taken Rutu's build and just scaled damage all the way rather than scale defenses. Which, if you ask me, sounds a little silly because they're still gonna hit dot cap, right? You know, on non-Uber content, you're gonna hit dot cap, and then the rest of your damage is kind of like redundant. You know, it's an overkill sort of thing, right? So a majority of the things you'll be doing. So with that being said, that's kind of the reason why I don't believe in the Dendrobate. I think Dendrobate is a good idea for a league start. I just don't think, like, once you hit a week or two in, you should still be using Dendrobate. Is a bit of a I think you can hit dot cap without it. Also, the stats that come from the Dendro, which is dexterity, intelligence, you can actually scale into skill duration. You can scale into projectile speed, and there's a lot of quality of life, especially when it comes to skill duration for this build. All right, so let's talk about the two main variants. You have the main variant of I'm Exal's build, which is using melding of the flesh, just maxing out core resistances, using tattoos, and then using a full fizz to elemental conversion. So that build has very high amounts of physical EHP and very high amounts of elemental EHP. The downside to that build is you don't have very high amounts of chaos EHP, and also you don't have very good ability to take to deal with, like, stuff like resistance penetration, resistance shredding from mobs, etc. So I think that is the downside to I'm Exal's build. Especially you also find it a bit of a trouble dealing with stuff like minus max res, especially if it's the max res of stuff that, you know, I mean, yeah, so yeah. Anyway, so that being said, I do feel that this variant is stronger in terms of the EHP. I think this is tankier. I think this variant also has much better survivability, especially dealing with, like, very, very difficult content like Simulacrum 30s, like 100% delirious maps. I think this is just way better in terms of tankiness. And in terms of damage, I think it's about the same. So yeah, let's talk about the build, right? And let's briefly run through everything. I think this has better clear as well, but I'll explain why later as well. It's mostly because in this setup you're gonna get about max 7 pierce and have the same breakpoints for projectile speed and duration. Okay, so let's just briefly go through this variant of the build, and let's talk about scaling mechanisms and for defenses and offenses. So when it comes to defenses, you actually don't have any determination or grace, right? So I have 0 armor, I have almost close to 0 evasion, right? And the reason for this is your mitigation is going to, the way you're going to look at mitigation is completely different than what historically you have done mitigation, and mostly because there is a broken combination called Blood Notch and Immutable Force, right? So Blood Notch and Immutable Force basically, do you, like, for example, have any, like, if you have any idea of what Aegis Aurora builds, what made Aegis Aurora build strong, this is the HP variant, the life variant of the Aegis Aurora combination. It requires way less investment, and it has It requires, okay, it doesn't require way less investment. It requires the same amount of investment, I think, but and it's only really truly strong on a very specific class. So on a Pathfinder, it's extremely strong because this combination of gems works very well with Petrified Blood and Progenesis combined, and also mainly because it works like this. So when you have Immutable Force and Blood Notch, or as long as you have something like Eldritch Battery and this particular notable mastery, which is Stun Threshold based off 60% of your energy shield instead of life, you're almost every hit is almost gonna always stun you, right? If you don't have avoid stun on anywhere in your tree, every hit's gonna stun you, and because every hit's gonna stun you, Immutable basically reduces the stun duration to like 0.03 seconds or something like that. So you don't have any interruption at all. And secondly, every time you stun, which is every time you get stunned, so anytime you take a hit, what's going to happen is 59% of the damage you take is going to be recovered as life. So it's the same thing as Aegis Aurora, except while Aegis Aurora can kind of like, whenever you block, you go straight to like max ES, for example. In this case, you're only recovering 60% or up to 60% of the hit, right? So the way we mitigate the remaining like 30 or 41% that we don't recover, the answer is that it's recovered. Is mitigated through Petrified Blood and mitigated through Progenesis with Progenesis like Flask effect. So you have Flask effect from Pathfinder, you have Permaflask uptime. You're gonna reduce the size of hits quite dramatically, and then it means that Blood Notch Immutable will then keep you alive regardless. The other thing as well is since that you only really truly care about really large hits, you don't really need something like armor, right? Evasion is nice as well, but it's far better to get flat mitigation, right? It's like kind of like a Diablo 4 kind of mentality, because you just want to reduce the damage as much as possible in terms of percentages to the point where it can no longer one-shot you, and because it can no longer one-shot you, Blood Notch and Immutable basically keeps you alive for every hit, right? And for that to happen, we do two things, right? So in this case here, if I get my Flask up, you realize I have 87 I have 87 fire res and 87 chaos res. My cold and lightning don't matter because I have Mahuzotls and I have Tempered by War. So Mahuzotls and Tempered by War is a pretty well-known mechanic. What it does is that it shifts all your cold and lightning damage to both fire and chaos damage, incoming damage, right? And it also takes your 50% of the fire damage you take and shifts that to chaos. That means a lot of your damage that you're receiving is going to start being split. It's going to split amongst like fire and chaos, and then they are mitigated quite significantly because of 87% Ores. This is kept up because of Everlasting Sacrifice, which is on Mahuzotls. I'm pretty sure most of you already know this mechanic. And so that's a pretty sizable amount of mitigation. And then furthermore, you have something like Doppelganger. So in Doppelganger, what it does is that you take less physical and chaos damage taken. So you take 39% less damage effectively. And you're already mitigating a large amount of physical hits for physical using like Fizz taken as. So in his case, you have, in my shield, I have 6% Fizz taken as fire. Helmet has 17 taken as chaos. My Watcher's Eye is 9% Fizz taken as fire, and what was it? And I have and my Tempered by War has 2 nodes, which is here 5% and 5%. So that's 10%. So altogether, you have like I need to calculate this. What the hell? I think it's 45% of the incoming physical damage is taken as either fire or chaos. And with that, you basically cut a lot of the incoming physical by a sizable amount, and then you further reduce it by Doppelganger. And whatever chaos you take is also reduced because of Doppelganger, so you have quite a lot of EHP. I think my Fizz hit is about 90k, and then max elemental hit is about 200, and the max chaos is about 180. Yeah, no, sorry. Fizz is actually, I think, 70k. Yeah. So then also, if you look at the skills, I also have Immortal Core. Now, normally you'd say Immortal Core is great, right? It gives you less elemental and physical damage taken, so less fire and less physical damage taken. But uptime on it is usually bad. But in this case here, because you're scaling so much duration and you are using the anomalous version with ashes, so anomalous version gives you like, was it 20% cooldown reduction? Yeah, cooldown recovery rate 20%, and then it goes up to 50 because of ashes. So this has like 2 seconds cooldown, and then because you're scaling so much duration for Spark, the duration of Immortal Core with an increased duration gem is actually 2.74 seconds. So you have close to 60% uptime on Immortal Core, which means you're taking very little damage, incoming damage at all. Okay, you have as well this. So I have Arctic Armor, right? So Arctic Armor, whenever I'm stationary, I take less physical and less fire damage, right? I probably want to get the anomalous, or was it the diversion? I can't remember. There's one version that gives you even more reduction, but yeah. So with all these damage reductions, basically you're mitigating the size of all big hits to a significantly small enough number that Immutable and Blood Notch will just basically keep you alive. So any hit that you can mitigate to within your life pool is not going to kill you. Right? So that's kind of the reason why this build is like super tanky. You see me like deal with all manner of hits and still survive. And this is also the reason why it's probably tankier than even the melding of the flash combination, because melding, although you have very large hit mitigation, your recovery is, in that build, your recovery is not guaranteed. It's based on your spark hitting stuff. In this case, you have recovery from not only recoup, you recovery from enemy hit with spells, you have recovery from Flask, permaflask, and you also have recovery from this. Right, so that's like multiple sources of recovery. And yeah, let me think about what I want to say next. Yeah, so pretty much this is a way tankier build than I think even the melding setup. And then also, yeah, the last thing. So melding has no strong dot mitigation, right? And in this case here, you have strong dot mitigation because this less physical and chaos damage taken includes DOTs. Includes damage over time. If you look at this as well, less physical and elemental damage taken also includes DOTs. It's not just hits. So you're mitigating even the damage over time that's coming through, and that's kind of the reason why this is like really strong. You have Leaf Shade, which halves damage over time taken as well, to the point where if you have incoming dots, you have way enough time to respond to it, and it keeps you alive. I can do Uber Serious, and I can actually run into his clouds. And as long as I can recognize fast enough that I need to pot or I need to dash out very quickly, I won't die. So that's that's like, I think the best part of this build. Like you don't take any threat from dot entirely. Like dots are perfectly fine. You can manage them pretty well. Okay, let's talk about spell suppression as well. Spell suppression is 100%. You're getting it because Doppelganger is also a dexterity base. And because you're going for all your helm, gloves, and boots are rares, you can actually get them dex based as well. So you can get suppression through this. So 15% chance to suppress spell damage. And then you just pick up all the suppression nodes here. And you have one suppression node here, I believe. Yep, one suppression node here. So that's 100% spell suppression. You also have this tattoo, which is a loyalty tattoo Ahuana. So whenever it procs, you have also 10% increased amount prevented with cell suppression. All right, so that's defenses. I think I've pretty much covered defenses entirely. Let's now talk about damage. All right, so damage is interesting. How do you hit 39 million? And the answer is Spark has very interesting multipliers. Also, these multipliers are not consistent per se because they're highly dependent on the arena, but almost always you should be able to hit a 3 to 3.5 multiplier as long as you know what you're doing, and also if you're not like fighting in an open area map, right? So for that to for this multiplier to happen, you need two things. You need to scale duration and you need to scale projectile speed. Okay, so I've scaled projectile speed to around 4 times multiplier, which is, I think, I won't say IDU, but it is the optimal amount of projectile speed I think that's possible. And you do that primarily through this. You have Anomalous Blood and Sand with Enhance. So that gives you about 74% increased projectile speed. And then also you have projectile speed on almost, I think, not almost, but every like dexterity node. So you have 8% projectile speed all the way through. So 8% all the way through here. And then you get this projectile speed node here. And yeah. So that gives me about 4 times projectile speed. So what is the duration of my spark? The duration of my spark is actually 4.7 seconds, which I think is also a breakpoint. Yeah, do this by getting a impossible escape jewel with Mage Bane. So I have all the duration nodes here. I also get duration from here, so that's 10%, and I get duration from every 3% until int node basically. All the int nodes here I've converted to duration, so that's 3% per node. You're also going to go for anomalous efficacy support to get you 35% skill effect duration. I believe this is stronger for this particular combination. So if you go for the melding setup that iMixel has, the way you deal with the mana cost of your skills is that you're gonna get like Divergent Inspiration or something, and that reduces your mana cost of your spells to near zero. Oh no, not near zero. By a significant amount. And then for him, he has Mage Blood, right? And his Mage Blood has one of his flasks has like reduced mana cost, and that kind of keeps his like mana cost of his spark to like 1 or something. But in this case, you don't have a Mage Blood, and also you don't have, I mean, you want duration, right? Because duration scales damage. So you're not going inspiration. How do you do with mana as well? So mana is dealt with Eldritch Battery. So with Replica Sword of the Divine, your life flasks are going to apply to your energy shield, and your energy shield is going to be used for your mana spend, right? Because of the flask. So Replica Sword of the Divine says life recovery for flask also applies to energy shield during effect, 50% increased duration, and Eldritch Battery during effect, right? And you see, as you can see, my flasks keep healing even if my HP is full, and the reason for that is because Pathfinder has this thing called I think, was it Master Surgeon? Yeah, Master Surgeon. So life flask effects are not removed when unreserved life is filled. Life effect flasks do not queue. 50% less life recovery from flask. So with that, I have pretty much energy shield like topping up the max quickly, and then whenever it tops up the max, everlasting sacrifice procs, and I get 5% max resistances. Alright, so yeah, that's the spark multiplier in terms of how I get damage high enough. It also means that with such a long duration spark, any constrained arena will mean that you have like a full arena full of sparks. It'll look exactly like this, and if I get all the cast speed bonuses up, it's just a full arena of white. And stuff like arena, and stuff like a ritual where you have a defined arena, stuff like Maven Invites, stuff just spawns and dies, even though it's poison, right? And yeah. Anyway, quite happy to see this outcome. Let's talk about gearing. So in this case, as you can tell, I'm not using Phantasmal Spark. I think there are I think there are two interim gearing mechanisms you can fall back on when you are doing Spark. So in the early game, you're not going to run Spark. Spark is like terrible for like League Start. When you League Start, you're most likely going to do something like Caustic Arrow, you're going to do something like Poison Concoction, and then you transition to something like maybe Forbidden Riot, which scales pretty well despite low investment. And then eventually when you get a large amount of currency, about 100 divines, you complete transition to Spark. And when you complete transition to Spark, you're still not really at the full end game yet. You're just basically getting the items that will enable you to do Poison Spark, because those are quite kind of expensive as it is. But even so, you are going to do only one of two different variations. So one is you go for a 30% Ash of the Stars, so 30% quality, and you go for Phantasmal Spark. That gives you 100% of Lightning converted to Elemental, or Lightning converted to Chaos, which allows your Spark to poison, right? So you can do that with a 30% Ashes. You don't have to care about reservation efficiency, but 30% Ashes is required, and then you have to get Spark 20% to 23% quality, depending on how much quality you had on your amulet, right? So there's one way of getting like 100%, getting your spark to convert to chaos and getting your spark to poison. The other way is original sin. So I don't see a lot of people doing this, but to be frank, if the ashes and phantasmal combination is more expensive, it is actually better to go original sin. And the reason why it's better to go original sin is because original sin does two separate things. One, it converts all elemental damage to chaos, which means it only includes added flat damage from lightning. It also includes added flat damage from every other thing. So cold, fire, etc. is all going to be added to your spark damage. So if you go original sin, you're not really required to get stuff like added cold lightning damage to spells. You can actually get added cold damage to spells, added fire damage to spells. Like you can get those scepters or weapons that people have bricked, right? They didn't get the right mod on it and they're just selling it for cheaper. You can actually get those because original sin will convert all elemental spell damage to chaos. So that's one way and one reason. The other reason is by going original sin, you don't need despair. So despair is one of the ways you skill damage with phantasmal spark. You need both temp chains and despair in order for phantasmal spark to feel good. In this case, you don't need it because original sin is going to force nearby enemy chaos resistance to 0. So even if you put despair on them, they don't take more damage, right? Anomalous despair is one exception to this, but even if you anomalous despair, the increased damage is marginal, even with an original sin ring. So my personal take is, if you see that the cost of original sin is the same price as phantasmal spark plus a decent ashes, please go original sin. You're almost always better off that way, right? And if you go original sin for your spark, you can just go for a standard quality. You don't even need divergent spark. And the standard quality spark has like, I think 20% projectile speed on it. So you can like get decent amounts of projectile speed with original sin without having to like go ashes. So why have I gone ashes here, right? So the reason being is ashes gives me a lot of quality of life for the rest of my skills. So all the auras, my frost blink is insane. You look at this, 249 increased cooldown recovery rate for each rare unique enemy in the area. This is why when I do like simulacrums, delirium 100%, I'm constantly moving around with frost blink, right? I can cast and frost blink almost at the same time because frost blink is instantaneous, right? So this is kind of the reason why like there's a lot of quality of life that's happening for me. I also have like, if you look at an Immortal core, as I mentioned before, cooldown reduction or the cooldown recovery rate is so high that you have only a cooldown time of 2 seconds, so you have decent amount of uptime. Stuff like, I mean, even shield charge, come think of it, shield charge gets like 50% increased movement speed. So you get a whole lot of quality of life with Ashes of the Stars. And also, if you can eventually afford this, a 2120 Divergent Spark gives you 5 extra projectiles, right? So normally Spark has like 8 extra projectiles at level 26. But if you go for Ashes and with Divergent, it goes up to 15. So I don't actually have the Helm enchant. I'm probably going to get that soon. It does cost 25 divines. I honestly feel like 25 divines for an enchant is kind of stupid, right? It's just a lot of money on a helm, and you really must be confident that the helm is not something you're going to replace anytime soon. So yeah, I mean, I find this a way cheaper way to scale this, because even if I don't want to go Spark anymore, I can just sell off the Ashes. I don't have to bother about the helm at all. It's way harder to sell the helm, I think. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm scaling the projectile count and the projectile speed and duration of Spark. When it comes to the item rolls on your weapons, actually, come to think of it, the only ways you'd scale Spark damage is a decent weapon. So in this case, something like this, you do want Oscillating Scepter for Elemental Overload, that gives you more damage, and then your clusters, right? So in this case, I've gone for a lightning with a lightning cluster with increased attack speed and cast speed with lightning skills, as well as 35% increased effect. I have 2 of them. One is a 9, was it 9 or is it? One is a 8 passive one, and one is a 12 passive one. And they do contribute quite a significant amount of damage. So it's mostly your weapon and the clusters that is really scaling your damage, as well as links and levels on your chest armor. If I can get a 2 the projectile and 2 the duration doppelgangers, I'll be more than happy to pay like 80 divines for this, but I haven't seen one pop on the market yet. Yeah, and that's pretty much for armor, like scaling for damage on your gear. Let's talk about the rolls on your rare items. So in this case here, you have you want Fizz taken as elemental. If it's either Fizz taken as fire or Fizz taken as chaos. Do not get Fizz taken as cold, and do not get Fizz taken as lightning, because you're going to kill yourself. You do want reservation efficiency on your suffix, which you can get with an essence, and you want to get an Aisling increased duration of ailments, you inflict or focus on your suffix as well. You can craft this by yourself pretty deterministically. It may take some RNG involved, because you may fail your Aislings or you may fail your Veiled Chaos. But the step for this is you get the Fractured Physical taken as Chaos or Fire on the suffix. It's a Delve mod. You slam on the essence and you get an open suffix and an open prefix. You put suffix can't be changed, and then you either Aisling it or you Veiled Chaos it. I would Veiled Chaos personally and just reset if things go wrong. But Veiled Chaos, if you're lucky, you fill up suffix instead of prefix, and you don't fill up your prefixes entirely, and you just unveil the duration of ailments, and then you can craft prefixes using Eldritch Chaos. You can use Eldritch to craft your prefixes, which is really cheap. For gloves, similar methodology, except you're going to be slamming I think you get a Fractured Suppress, you slam Veil Chaos, hopefully you get a Chaos suffix as well. If not, empty suffix can't be changed. Reforge Chaos, get T1 or T2 Chaos, and you're good. And then use Eldritch Currency to reroll your prefixes until you get decent life rolls. For your helm and your gloves, you 100% want to craft on the projectile craft, and the reason being is that Pierce is amazing, especially for very difficult content like simulacrums, for 100% delirium, because you want your projectile that persists to be able to persist. So if you expand all your pierces, your sparks no longer persist. And if you have a high amount of pierce, so in this case I have 6 pierce right now, I can get 7 if I get if I elevate the glove implicit, and with that I should be able to clear like super easily with a high duration spark, with high projectile speed spark. Boots is going to be this: suppression, dexterity, movement speed with chance to avoid being chilled. Chance to avoid being frozen is cool too, but in this case I've gone for a suffix that has focus has increased cooldown recovery rate, because I am relying on focus to boost my damage and my damage. I have focus on a 6.40 cooldown with a 4-second duration, so I think that's enough for me. Ringcraft is this: cast speed, chaos, recoup suffix, and then you just craft your prefixes. Pretty straightforward. Your prefixes, what you do is you get a cast speed, chaos, and damage taken recoup as life on your suffix. You can probably essence it, just get lucky I guess. Essence it, maybe get another res instead of chaos here, and then once you have suffixes done, prefixes can't be changed. You can veil for life. You can veil for life, and then slam for you can veil and then unveil for life for roll, and then slam for Crusader mod to get the 15 life per enemy hit with spells. In this case I failed that, and what I did was suffixes can't be changed again, reforge life until I get the spell mod, right? I could go, yeah, I mean, yeah. Did I reforge? No, I reforged caster. And I got the spell mod, and then I just crafted on the life. I didn't really quite care about the third mod. What I did was just exhaust slam, and I got increased maximum energy shield. The belt is going to be very hard to come by. In this case, I have managed to snag a pretty good synthesis base. This was 2 divines. Nobody looks at synthesis belt bases, and I think it's a bit of a shame, because there are actually very good synthesis belt bases like going around. I do feel that you don't need a Stygian Vice, even if the Stygian Vice has corrupted blood, mainly because you can get like stuff like this. So 9% increased life, cannot be shocked, 15% flask effect duration. And in this case here, what I did was I used Essence of, I think, Horror? Is it Essence of Horror? Let me go check it out. Yep, I used Essence of Horror for the Alchemist Genius suffix. You want to spam it until you get something like T1 reduced flask charges used, or T1 increased flask charges gained, and then an open suffix. Okay, once you have that, your prefixes can't be changed. Oh, you don't even have an open suffix. As long as there's a res or dexterity mod or an attribute mod you need, it's perfectly fine. Once you get those suffixes done, your suffixes can't be changed. Hit a veiled chaos, and then or your prefixes can't be changed. You hit reforged life, get T1 life or something like that. You can use Aisling next to get the reduced flask charges gain and increase flask effect, or you can just YOLO it like me. What I did was I just veiled chaos. It had 2 open prefixes, I think. Yeah, 2 open prefixes, and I just exalt slammed. And the reason why I exalt slammed is because I blocked. So I blocked, I think, armor and evasion. Oh no, armor and energy shield, and then I exalt slam. You have a decent amount of chance to get a life roll, and hopefully get a high life roll out of this, right? If not, you can always reset. You just suffixes can't be changed, and veil chaos again to repeat this procedure. Anyway, once you get the life modifier with the flask modifier, you just craft on increased damage as your third prefix, and you're kind of done. All right, flask heavily depends on how much flask uptime you have. Try to aim for 100%. If not, 90 something is pretty decent. In this case, Replica Star Divine is 100% required, mandatory. Progenesis is optional. You can replace it with an Onslaught Flask, but it does reduce your EHP. Alchemist Ruby Flask is 100% required. I've gone for reduced flask curse effect here. So my reduced curse effect is like close to, I think, 100%. I think maybe more than 100%. So Quicksilver Flask just for mobility and cast speed. And then this Life Flask. So you do want Cautious Divine Life Flask of Sealing. Immunity to bleeding, immunity to corrupted blood. And also more recovery when used while low life. So with more recovery, if used while low life, the moment you hit the petrified blood levels, so your life goes to like half, you can hit this and basically your life will just go to max instantly, right? Because it's such insane recovery of your flask. So yeah, this is like super, super strong. Let's talk about passives. I actually have to head off now, so let me just quickly do this. You're going to take a lot of these passive nodes here because one, you want this tattoo. So 2% to all maximum resistances is here. You also take all these small nodes, which are not too bad because it gives you more strength. This entire area is going to make up majority of your strength requirement for your gear. And you're going for Tempered by War Rakiatas. 10055 is going to give you 5% here and 5% here, Fist taken as fire, and then 4% maximum life here and 20 strength here. So 1055, if you can go for that, I'm pretty sure it's like less than 5 divines. It is the perfect one for this one. All right, so you're getting the reservation nodes here. You're getting increased damage per aura or hero skills affecting you. You're going for the flask node here. This is going to give you 100%, almost close to 100% flask uptime on your life flask. You have evasion mastery here. Just gives you suppression, caps your suppression out. You path here as well. You get the chaos damage over time multiply and the chaos res. Okay, so now you path here. What you're going to do is you're going to get this journey tattoo of the body. You're getting 3 of them. All right, so 25 life per allocated journey tattoo is going to give you 75 life per allocated, because you're going to have 3 nodes. So 1, 2, 3, and this gives you 225 increased life. It's almost like 2 extra gear pieces, right? So this is pretty insane. You path up here, you're going to have fatal toxins. Poisons you inflict deal 20% damage 20% faster. You can go for enemies poison, but you cannot deal critical strikes. This is for more EHP if you feel that you need it, and to deal with crits. You path here, you're going to get the cluster jewel socket. You can get this ones, but you can also get the chaos ones, 3 notable chaos ones. It really depends on what you want to accomplish. I have a Watcher's Eye here. This is pretty much the perfect Watcher's Eye for me, but you can find your own, I guess. I have a Corrupted Blood Jewel here, and a path here. I'm getting Pierce, number of pierces. So I have 3 extra pierces from here, as well as the more projectile speed mastery. If you don't have enough projectile speed to get to the next breakpoint, you skip this area and you go for this. And you get 30% increased projectile speed here. The thing is, you still need at least mandatory, I think, 3 pierces. So 1 on the helm, 1 on the gloves, and 1 on the implicit is enough. But if you can get this, which is another 3 more, this makes your clear insane, right? Even for like really tanky endgame content. All right, simulacrums, for example. Get the suppression nodes here, go here, get the socket. In this case, I have an impossible escape. This gives me mage bane area. So I'm getting here, this gives me duration. So this is 45% total increased duration. Evasion, suppression here, I've got 10% suppression here. And here, even more life flask gain per second, right? So that keeps your life flask up constantly. You can do bosses and your life flask will always be available. You can path here, you get the life nodes, get the life mastery 50, the maximum life, as well as the flask recovery rate for life. So you get insane amount of recovery on your flask. Path here, this flask node is really strong. So 100% get this. Suppression nodes here. This also gives you life flask when you suppress spell damage. So you, as I mentioned, the way you're generating life flask, you're almost always gonna have life flask available, right? So it gives you the ability to just stay alive. You path up here, you get the cluster jewel. Whatever cluster that is strong here, you just put it. I mean, for me, this is the strongest cluster. So yeah, go here, journey tattoo of the body as well. So let's talk about the top half of the passive tree. So go here, damage over time, skill effect duration, life. This gives strength as well, and these give a whole bunch of stats which are really good. Path here, get all the nodes replaced by increased skill effect duration. Balance it accordingly depending on how much stats you actually need. Here, you're getting the stun thresholds based off 60% of your energy shield instead of life. This is to allow you to proc immutable force and blood notch. You're also getting the life and energy shield nodes here with extra strength, really helpful. You get your last journey tattoo of the body here, and then you have this. So on a tattoo of the berserker, you can onslaught for 4 seconds on hit. Basically allows you to not have to run the onslaught flask, and also not have to run onslaught any other pieces of your gear. Personally, I would like +1 spell gems, but I figure that this would be worthwhile. If I can find a way of getting onslaught somewhere else, I will drop this and then get a +1 of spells here. Path up here and get your last cluster. You will always want an explode cluster. So I don't agree with the Asanas gearing setup, and for the reason that when you go Asanas, you lose one of your gear pieces that is dex based, that has evasion, which means you can't run this suppression mastery, and then you lose quite a bit of suppression. Also, you can't get suppression on asanas, so you lose a significant amount of suppression here. You lose, I think, about 29% suppression potentially, and you have to make it out elsewhere, which is a pain. So personally, I would never go asanas. And I'll just get a third cluster and just get explode. So enemies who kill have a 10% chance to explode, dealing a quarter of their maximum life as chaos damage. I'm much more in favor of this, right? Touch of cruelty. So with these 2 remaining sockets, I've gone Gathering Winds, Forbidden Flame Jewels, Forbidden Flesh, and Forbidden Flame Jewels. Gathering Winds total right now is like 140 divines or some shit like that. Personally, if you think it's too expensive, this is actually just for quality of life. You can go for stuff like Way of the Poacher. I think Way of the Poacher gives you the same amount of damage because I don't have any way of generating frenzy charges at the moment. But this gives you the same amount of damage, and personally, the only difference it really makes is I get more action speed for my movement speed. So higher mobility through my maps. And that's pretty much it. Alright, that's all there is to it about the build. If you have any questions, do ask me in the comment section. I'm more happy to respond to you. POBs I will supply, and hope this is all you need. Alright, see you guys. Bye. If you need a video on how to transition to this from Forbidden Rite, I'm more than happy to cover that with you. But I'm pretty sure at this late in the league, you should be able to just jump straight into like Poison Spark and find a way that scales pretty quickly. Like you can get 100 divines in like less than a week of play. Anyway, see you guys. I'm out. Bye.